Hello and welcome to Transformation Tuesday, guys. I'm Chris Jackson coming to you live, and I'm going to wait for a few people to jump on while you guys are jumping on and while I'm waiting for you guys. I'll tell you a little bit about tonight's topic, which is how to create change. And it's one of the things this is the ultimate in creating transformation in our life. This is the ultimate in making our life the ultimate masterpiece. This is the question that a lot of people find very, very challenging, and I want to shed some light on how to create change. How do we create tangible, long-lasting, permanent change in our life? How do we make it stick? And how do we approach change? So I'm going to be sharing with you some tools, some strategies, some perspectives, and some of the ways that I create change in my own personal life, as well as the lives of my clients. So I'm going to jump in, and if you guys have questions as we go, please share your comments, share your questions as we go, and I'm excited to share my perspectives on how to create change, because my job is helping people change. On a daily basis, I'm having conversation after conversation after conversation about how to help people change aspects of themselves. So I'm going to share with you the best of what I've got. So first of all, let's take a look at why do we want to change in the first place? Because I think it's an important question to ask is, well, why bother changing anyway? Why bother? And I think ultimately what change comes down to is it comes down to how much we want to improve our life. How, we want to course correct. We want to embrace a different result in our external world and also a different result in our internal world. So we want to shift some part of ourselves. And we can only change if we're willing to get uncomfortable. We can only change if we're willing to grow, if we're willing to expand, if we're willing to move beyond our current limitations. So we have to have a level of commitment to actually wanting to change, because a lot of people want to change. So first of all, in our mind, we've got to get super, super motivated and really compelled to want to change. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen. So the first element here is we've got to care about change in the first place. Otherwise, we're not even in the game. Hey, Angela, good to have you here. We're talking about change today. And when we're able to change parts of ourselves, when we're able to change our thinking, our emotions, our beliefs, our thought patterns, our habits, all these things, and I'm going to touch on these in a lot of detail. When we're able to change these, this gives us empowerment. This is what it's about. It's about empowerment, because we want to be empowered. Hey, it's all good. We've only just started, Angela. Good to have you here. So we want to be fully empowered to be able to create the life that we want. Now, we have to reverse engineer and hack our reality such that we can create the results we want. So I'm going to share with you a couple of examples, but before we get into the nitty gritty, I think it's important to build out the understanding of change and why it's so important. Because we all have a life purpose. We all have a reason why we've come to this experience, we've come to this life. We've all got our own unique purpose. Now, we can either choose to embrace and discover and be the expression of our life's purpose or not. Now, that's a choice. So we can deny that, or we could expand and we could embrace that, and that's a choice. And if we don't embrace change, then we will not get access to the tools, the skills, the strategies, and the way of being that's required for us to live that. So if you like the idea of living your life's purpose, then you're going to love change, because change is automatic, but progress is not. So what does that mean? Well, it means that we're always going to experience change. What matters is that change moving us in the direction that we want, and is that change giving us empowerment? So I'm going to touch on some really powerful strategies on how we can change, and how we can change the deepest, most unconscious parts of ourselves to create better results. So first off, we have to first embrace change. We have to recognize that if we're experiencing a degree of pain around something, that's one way of changing. Alternatively, we don't necessarily have to be experiencing pain. We can just choose to change before the pain arrives. Now, here's the thing. A lot of us, we wait for the pain to arrive before we then want to course correct, before we want to change. For a lot of us, we stay in the comfort zone, and then eventually what happens is the comfort zone becomes the pain zone. It becomes too painful to stay there. Then all of a sudden we think, oh, I've got to do something. I've got to course correct. So, and tell me if you guys can agree, we've all experienced a painful scenario in our life of some degree, whether it be breaking up with a partner, whether it be being in a job we don't like, maybe having bad health. There's something that happens in our life that causes us to want to course correct, causes us to make a different decision. causes us to alter the trajectory of our life. Now, as I said, we don't have to wait for some tragic, big, nasty event to happen in our life to create change. We can just decide to change from a place of peace and happiness and decide that we want to naturally keep improving our life. Yeah, so we can decide to choose to change whenever we want. We just need to understand that in order to create change, we have to be committed. We have to actually want to create the change, because a lot of people want to change, but they're not willing to put in the effort. They're not willing to have the resilience and the commitment to create that change. And I'll touch on the reasons why it's so hard. Why it's so hard for people to change, because there's a lot of patterns. There's a lot of programming that we experience as a human being. But ultimately, the way to approach this scenario around change is to consider life like we're in a sailing boat, and we're sailing towards a destination, and the wind might be blowing behind us, the wind might be blowing from in front of us, but the wind, it doesn't matter which direction the wind is blowing, right? The wind is the conditions of life, the wind is your environment, the wind is the people in your life, the wind is the situation. You can change your sail, you can change the angle of your sail, you can put up a bigger sail, you can put up a smaller sail, you can turn the rudder, you can go upwind, you can tack, you can go any direction you want. You just have to be flexible with how you're going to approach where you want to go. So yes, there might be some challenging situations and circumstances in your environment, i.e. the wind blowing in the wrong direction, but there's nothing stopping you from still getting where you want to go. You just have to change your approach. You have to be more flexible. We have to change. So here's the thing, is in order for us to change our external reality, our external world, our result, we have to change our internal world. There's no other way. We can't just approach life with a waiting, wishing and hoping for things to randomly, magically change in our environment. We have to take responsibility for, if we want things to change, we have to be, yeah, thanks Angela, active. We've got to be active rather than passive. We have to be the ones that commit to, you know what, I'm going to be the one that takes responsibility for my life. I've created the results in my life. I'm not going to outsource my sovereignty. I'm not going to outsource anything. I'm going to outsource my excuses to anything else. I'm going to take responsibility and say, you know what, I've created the results in my life. I've created everything here. I can uncreate it. I can change it whenever I want when I take responsibility for it. Hey, Daddy, good to see you here, brother. How are you, mate? So we need to take responsibility for change. And just like a caterpillar puts itself in a cocoon and goes through the process of metamorphosis, I pronounced that right, metamorphosis, and turns into a butterfly, we as human beings can also go through the same process of transformation, of shifting all the patterns and the habits and the processes and the personality and our values and our belief systems and everything within us. We can shift all of that. I'm going to touch on that in a second as to all those different categories, those little internal dials of our mind that we can shift. Hey, Carolyn, good to see you here. So we have to really embrace change. We have to recognize that we all can change. We have to recognize that with the research from neuroscience and brain plasticity, we can change anything about our neurology. We can change any habit. We can change any belief. We can change absolutely anything and everything about the human being. We can change everything about our way of being. We can change all of our behaviors, all of our habits, all of our attitudes. 100% of our everything we can change, including our physiology. We can change everything about our body. We can change everything about our mind. And this is empowerment. This is recognition of, it's not coming from a place of I'm not good enough. It's saying, what are the parts of me that I would like to upgrade? What are the parts of me I would like to improve? Where do I want to be empowered in my life? And we can shift every element of our being. And I want to share that with you today. So we need to be the creators. We need to be the catalyst. We need to be our own superhero in creating change in our life. We can't just wait for some guru to come along and change it for us. We have to be the one that commits and decides, you know what, I'm going to change my life. And not necessarily waiting for a crisis to approach before we commit to change. Hey Ross, good to see you here, mate. How you doing? So what can we actually change? I was saying we can change a lot of the functions of our personality and everything within us. Well, the reason why we need to consider this is because if we want to change our external reality, i.e. the money in our bank account, the amount of weight that we've got on our body, the quality of relationships that we've got, the habits that we've got. If we want to change all of that stuff in the external world, the only way we can change it is through embracing and changing our internal world, right? Success is an inside job. Everything that we create in our life, we can trace it back to the sum total of choices that we've made through our entire life. From the moment we were born to the moment right now, We have been choosing we've made so many decisions of every moment of all of our life all the way up to now. So we've been choosing left, right, left, right, left, right. I'm going to go there, do I want to go there? Do I want to go to uni or not go to uni? Do I want to live in this suburb or live in that suburb? Do I want to date that person, not date that person? We're always making decisions, and a lot of these are unconscious decisions. So we need to take responsibility for, well, look, whatever I've created in my life, I've created it, and I can take responsibility for it. So really what we now know is, from that we can recognize, well, my external reality has been created. It's a reflection of my internal reality. So now we have to go internal if we want to create change. We have to go, right, I'm going to take responsibility for my life. This is the most important part. Hey, thanks, Angela. Thanks, Steady. Yeah, success is an inside job. So we can change anything about our external world, our external results, when we change our internal. Now, this is called the process of manifestation. So the process of manifestation works like this. It starts with our own internal belief systems and our internal perspective about how we view our reality. What do we believe about our reality? Now, that perspective about reality, which is another way of saying it's our model of the world. We have an internal model of what reality is. That then informs our beliefs. Our beliefs then inform our thinking, our thought process. The thought process then creates emotions. Our emotions then couple with our physiology and our thinking, which then produces our decisions. Our decisions then produce our actions, and our actions produce our results. So there's this cascading effect that's happening, which all starts with what's our perspective of reality. So we need to recognize that we can trace that cascading effect all the way back to, well, what's my perspective on reality? What are my beliefs? And then thoughts, emotions, decisions, actions, etc. So there's links in the chain. And this is a cascading effect that is happening whether or not we're aware of it. So just like the law of gravity, this is happening whether or not you're aware of it, and the degree of awareness that you have is irrelevant. This is a process that's happening. This is happening for every single human being. So we need to start to get curious about, well, if I want to create change, what's the part of me that I've got to change? And I'm going to suggest there's several categories that we can consider to create change. Now, what are these categories? Well, there's a lot of them, and I've just got 10 listed here, and I'm going to put this up in the show notes afterwards so you guys can have this. The first aspect is purpose. We can change our purpose. Now, again, some people, they have no purpose. They have no idea what their life's purpose is. They have no concept of that. So you can go from not having a purpose to having a purpose. Now, and again, I appreciate this is a huge topic in terms of, well, what is our life's purpose? Well, if we have never even contemplated what our life's purpose is, or if we haven't got a very, very specific, articulate, powerful, emotionally charged, certain sense of what our life's purpose is, then we're missing out on a huge proportion of our ability to create results in our external world. So we've got to embrace what is our purpose. And then there are varying different degrees of certainty and alignment and feeling of magnificence and authenticity. I think authenticity is probably the true word here. Is you want an authentic purpose, something that's authentic to you, not a purpose that's something that's grandiose or something that's egotistical or something that's going to look good to the outside world. You want a purpose that resonates with your core, that resonates with your spirit. So that's the first element. Another category that we've got to get clear on in terms of what we can change is our identity. Our identity is simply what we believe about ourselves. Our identity is simply what do we believe, who do we believe we are? You know, are we a leader? Are we a role model? Are we a follower? Are we kind? Are we compassionate? Are we heartless? Are we intelligent? Are we not intelligent? These are all the belief statements. This is the I am statements that we have in our unconscious mind, in our dialogue, that are going to determine what's our sense of identity. And this has been conditioned. 100%. The conditioning has been happening ever since the moment we were born. And we can either be conscious of the conditioning and choose to change it, or we can choose to leave it the same. Now, this is empowerment. So you're welcome, Angela. So our identity it's like a program. When you have a thought over and over and over again, an I am statement, like, I am a leader, I'm a role model, or I am no good, or I'm not good enough, that infuses a belief system, which is an identity belief system about who and what we are. And it's either empowering or disempowering. So we've got to first of all recognize, well, what is that? And then how do we change it? So we've got to recognize that this is a pattern that exists. Another one is our perspective in life. Now, our perspective is simply the way that we perceive our reality, right? So your perspective might be that, great, aren't we lucky to be alive? Right? If, for example, you could be experiencing any problem, but you could view it through the perspective of gratitude or joy or learning. right? You could be going through an experience right now that's incredibly challenging in your life. Now, you could look at it as if you're the victim. That could be your perspective. Or your perspective could be that you're the hero, that you're on this beautiful roller coaster of life. And yes, it's an adventure. Maybe, is it an adventure? Is it a mystery? Is it a war? Is it a dance? Is life a game? So this is your perspective. This is just simply a lens through which you are viewing your reality, which is your perspective. Another one of these categories here is your philosophy. What is your approach to life? What is the overriding theme through how you see your world? So it's similar to perspective, but it's more of a narrative around what's your perspective on overall over life, in terms of how do you want to show up in your life. And I'm going to go on. There's a lot more of these things to consider. We've got our attitude. Our attitude is it's a combination of our philosophy, our beliefs, our attitudes, but around a particular subject. So we can look at, well, what is your attitude to that? What is your attitude to that part of life? What is your attitude towards relationships? What is your attitude towards health? What is your attitude towards living your dream? What is your attitude in those areas? Now we've got to check in and say, well, is my attitude empowered? Do I have an empowered attitude? All right, because someone might look at their career and they might just think, well, what's the point? I don't want to go to work. Working sucks. I don't want to spend my day working. Right? That might be your attitude around work, is like, I can't be bothered. Or your attitude to work could be, you know what, I'm really looking forward to actually serving people and contributing and making a difference. So again, we get to choose our attitude. This is not something that's hardwired. Our attitude is something that's conditioned, but we can change it. We can change all of these functions about ourselves. Same thing with our personality. Our personality is not even fixed. We can shift our personality. So our personality really over time is a lot of these more deeper unconscious programs, but we can change those as well. We also have a story. We can change our story. Our story is simply the narrative of what we tell ourselves of what we've experienced in our life, right? An example of our story is, am I the victim? This and this and this happened to me. I'm a victim. Or our story could be, you know what? This happened to me. Yeah, it was tough, and I bounced back. I bounced through it, and I evolved. I expanded. I was challenged, and I overcame that challenge. So again, this is simply the story that we tell ourselves of what happened, right? So we could either be the hero or the victim. It just depends on how you write the narrative of your life. Now this is happening, but it's all happening for most people. It's an unconscious process that people do by default. So we've got to understand, well, what is our story so that we can change it. The other areas of change include temperament, right? We also have our core values. Now, our core values are a major filter through which we view our reality, and our values are simply what we believe to be important. Our values are simply how we choose to spend our time, our resources, our money, how we decide right and wrong. So this is a major filter for our priorities in life. And a classic example is someone who wants better results in, say, finances, but if you ask them, well, what's important to you? You elicit their values, which is an unconscious set of priorities, and wealth creation might not be on their list. So it's no surprise that if you look at their bank account, if you look at their wealth status, it's no surprise that they're struggling with wealth, because it's not important to them. When you ask them, is money important? They say, no, money's not important. Well, I've got news for you. If money's not important, how much of it do you think you're going to have? All right? If you just said your partner wasn't important, do you think they're going to stick around? If you said your health is not important, how healthy are you going to be? So we need to recognize that these are some unconscious programs. Our values are unconscious programs that are driving most of our behavior. And this is all unconscious programming. 95% of our behavior is determined from our unconscious mind. 95%. So that means all the conditioning and all the programming and all the experiences and all the memories and everything that's happened in our life up until now, 95% of what we're experiencing right now is because of the conditioning of the past. So we're essentially living in the past if we're operating out of our unconscious mind, which is a problem. It's a problem because if we're just stuck in the unconscious, if we're just stuck in the past, then we can't change. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about changing. So we need to use our conscious mind, which is 5% of our processing power. We need to use that 5% to hack the 95% of our unconscious mind to create the change. So this is the conversation we're having right now. This is now using your conscious mind to access your unconscious mind to create change. So this is a powerful conversation. Another major filter here that we're talking about is beliefs. We've got to become aware of all of our beliefs so that we can change them. Right? Now we all have beliefs, and I've spoken a lot about beliefs, and we've all got a lot of limiting beliefs. Now, if we're not aware of our beliefs, then we can't change them. We first of all have to recognize that we have beliefs. We need to identify what are the beliefs, what are the limiting beliefs, what are the expansive beliefs, what are the ideal beliefs that we want to create for ourselves, and then we get to change them. So I'm going to come to how do we start to change these in more detail later on, but I just want to first of all talk about the things that we've got to change in the first place. And we've got to then also change our skills. If we want to get better results, and let me know in the comments if you can see areas in your life where you want to get better skills. If you know that there's certain functions or certain roles or certain abilities that you want to perform better, well, that's an area of our skill set which we've got to change. Because the level of skill that got us here, it's only got us to here. If we want to get to the next level, we have to upgrade our skill set. We have to transform our ability to get the job done. So our skills is incredibly important. How do we improve our skills? Well, through repetition, through mentoring, through action, through education, through mastering those skills. And again, you don't just get better at skills by randomly wishing, waiting, and hoping for them to get better. You've got to take action. You've got to commit to it. You've got to create a plan. You've got to commit to wanting to get better at that. So we also need to acquire knowledge. We need to change our knowledge. We need to upgrade our knowledge. We need to maybe shift it. We need to get a new perspective. Maybe the knowledge we've got was maybe since 1900 and froze to death, and we've got to update it so it's 2018 knowledge. So we've got to recognize, well, it's the knowledge that's got to change as well. Now, also our habits. Right? Now, I'm not just talking about biting your nails. I'm talking about all of the unconscious habits, like when you wake up, how you wake up, how much water do you drink, what foods do you drink, all the unconscious habits, like are you a natural people pleaser? When someone, and I used to experience this for myself, was I'd go to someone's house and they'd offer me like a drink or a meal, and my natural unconscious habit was to say no because I thought it was being polite. So we've got to recognize, okay, there's all these habits that are infused within us, and if we don't acknowledge all of those habits, then what happens is we're just living our life on repeat. We're literally living our life on autopilot. So we've got to acknowledge every single habit that we have, acknowledge it, identify it, and then decide, is that habit working for us? Right? Alcohol is another habit. Having a beer in your hand or a wine in your hand to feel like you're socially acceptable. That's another habit that we've been conditioned into feeling in Western society. So again, these are the kinds of habits we've got to check in and see, how are these habits serving us? Another key filter here is language. We have to be aware of our language that we're using, because if we're not using empowered, powerful, articulate, beautifully inspiring language, then again, we are going to unconsciously create a reality that's not serving us. I'll give you a classic example here, is when you go up and ask someone how they are. A lot of people say, oh, I'm not bad. How are you going? Oh, not bad. Yeah, not bad, nothing to complain about. It's a very, very low standard, right? It's a very low standard. Now, they're not just words. These words are conditioning unconscious thought patterns. So if you say you're not bad or nothing to complain about, it's a very, very low standard answer that's not going to elicit, and it's not firing up your neurology. It's not doing anything for you, right? So even though it's just a language pattern, if you habitually use these language patterns over and over and over and over again, you're going to find that your unconscious response is going to be how you feel. Oh, not bad, not bad. So we've got to hack our neurology. We've got to start to transform our vocabulary and come up with some juicier, some nicer, some more empowering words that are going to light us up, that are going to create a picture. Because when you use a word, when you actually use a word, what you do is your mind actually projects a picture out in front of you. You project a picture, you might project some sounds, you project a feeling. So those words are pointers. They're energetic pointers that create energy within you. So the words you use, they will either empower you or disempower you. Completely. So be aware of your language, because your language is creating your reality. So you've got to change your language. You've got to mix your language up. Be aware of it. And again, you need to be aware of your language. So this now leads to the next part, which is now talking about rightio. Well, Chris, you've told me all about these areas for change. Well, how do we physically do the change? Well, let me tell you. We have to have awareness first. So step one is we need to have awareness of the areas of life that we want to change. We have to have awareness, because if you're not aware of something, you can't change it, right? Awareness has to precede change. So once we're aware of something, we can now change it. But again, we also now need to have an empowered level of awareness in order to know, well, what parts of that do I want to change? What specific facets of that? What elements of that? In what context do I want to change that? So we've got to get really, really curious about, well, what are the parts that I want to change? So you want to go back to that list that I just mentioned before
and look at all those elements, you know, your philosophy, your attitude, your personality, your habits, your skills, your knowledge, all of that. And you've got to say, rightio, well, I need awareness of what are those elements? How do I, and even just gaining awareness of those in itself is incredibly powerful, because once we gain awareness of those, we can now change it. Because someone who's not aware, they can't change. So someone who don't want to change, or they don't have awareness, they're not even in the game of creating any change. So we need to understand specifically what are those areas that we want to change about ourselves. And in order to do that, we've got to take a look at ourselves. We have to have awareness. And what we need to do is we need to acknowledge what the gap is, because there will be where we are now and then where we want to be. And there's always going to be a gap. So we have to acknowledge the gap. We have to go, you know what? I've got a gap here. I'm here right now in this domain, in either my knowledge, my skill, my values, my beliefs, my attitude, my philosophy, my purpose, and I want to get to here. And then what we can do is we can build out a roadmap, or we build, first of all, say, well, where do we want to go? What's the outcome? Hey, Bella, good to see you here. And we can now build out a roadmap or a plan about, well, how do we close the gap? And this is a process that only happens by checking in and seeing, where are we at now? Where do I want to be? So we can actually change it. So that's the first process, is where am I now? Where do I want to be? And what's the gap? Now, the next thing is we've got to now recognize, well, what is that gap? What is the gap? Is it that we're not taking action? Is the gap that we're afraid? Is the gap that we just simply don't have the commitment or the work ethic or the resilience or the courage? What is the gap? What's the root cause of why there is a gap there in the first place? You know, is it a belief? Is it an attitude? Is it some perspective that we're missing, or maybe a faulty thinking pattern that's causing us to run this dysfunctional way of being, or this behavior that's getting in the way of us creating that result? So we now have to say, well, I've got a gap. What is the gap? And saying, well, what category does that gap fit into? And then we've got to then reverse engineer that experience to close the gap. We have to reverse engineer it. We might have to say, rightio, maybe I need some mentoring, maybe I need some coaching, maybe I need to get educated, maybe I need to shift my attitude, maybe I need to surround myself with different people, maybe I need to immerse myself in a different country, different environment, maybe I need to remove the opportunity to buy alcohol from my life, or maybe I need to remove my particular friendship group. We've now got to get really clever about how to reverse engineer that process, such that we can close the gap effectively and powerfully. So this is where we've got to get really, really clever and really hack that gap, hack the gap. We've got to hack the gap and recognize, okay, I need to get very, very clever about what that gap is and how to actually hack it. So I want to give you guys some strategies and suggestions on what is that gap and how do we hack it. So the gap typically is going to be lack of action. It's going to be a limiting belief. It's going to be a fear, or it's going to be procrastination. It's typically going to be one of those, or it's going to be a lack of awareness around the problem. So we won't actually know what the real problem is. Now, in reality, the problem is very rarely ever the actual root cause problem. So the problem is never the problem. We need to look below the tip of the iceberg and go, well, what's actually going on? What's actually creating the problem? So a classic example of procrastination would be, we might look at the gap and say, well, I'm procrastinating. If you look a little bit further below the iceberg, you'll see that procrastination is usually fear of success, fear of failure, perception of a skills deficit, running a perfectionist pattern, lack of a sense of connection to our purpose, or fear of failure, fear of success, fear of being judged, one of these things. So we've got to look a level deeper and go, okay, wow, what's actually going on here? So we need to have awareness. Again, it comes back to awareness, because once you have awareness, you can overcome it. But without awareness, it's just this mysterious blob of a problem that's just holding us back. It's like an invisible handbrake. So we need to get very, very curious about and self-inquiring within us to see, well, what is my gap? How do I move beyond that limitation? And it can't be done unless you have awareness of it. So I want to give you some structure and around how you can create change, because unless we have a structure in place, unless we have a plan, then the change will happen, but it's not necessarily going to be conscious change. So I describe conscious change as conscious growth. Random change is just change for the sake of change, whereas conscious change is conscious growth. Now, conscious growth is powerful because you're now growing in the direction that you want, and you're now empowered because you're now just not randomly changing with the winds of life. You're deliberately sailing in that direction because you want to go in that direction. So we first of all need to interrupt the patterns. We need to interrupt all the habits and all the patterns that we are running. So we need to become, again, awareness. Once you're aware of the habits, you can interrupt them. So what we've got to do is we need to be aware of them. Like, for example, what you can do is, and this is what I recommend for all of my clients do, is during the day, we have regular interruptions, which is an alarm that goes off every hour of the day. And you set your alarm to go off every hour of the day to remind you to interrupt whatever you're doing and come back and be present, to be connected, to be aligned, to bring yourself to a place of peace, and to bring yourself to a place of love and joy, and reflect on the magnificence of who and what we are. So it doesn't matter how busy you are, it doesn't matter what's going on in your life, your alarm goes off and you've got a structure to go, I'm going to close my eyes, I'm going to do a quick little meditation for 20 seconds, I'm going to bring myself back and I'm going to be present. That's an example of structure that interrupts whatever pattern that you're running. Same thing as whenever you walk through a doorway of a new house. And this is what I do. Whenever I enter a building, I go through the door, and that's a trigger to know, okay, great, what energy, what's my intention? What am I bringing to this building? Who do I want to be? How am I showing up? What's my philosophy? How do I want to impact and influence these people from a place of contribution? So that's just some examples of how you can set up triggers to interrupt the normal habits and the habitual patterns of life. So we can also set daily intentions. When you wake up, if you choose an intention, something you want to focus on for the day, and put it on the screensaver of your phone, that's another way of reminding yourself, using structure, to hack your reality. Because every time you look at your phone, you remind yourself, oh, that's my intention for today. Brings you back to a place of intention, of deliberate consciousness. So this is powerful stuff. I also recommend a daily review. A daily review is a process when you get to the end of your day and you open your journal and you write all the experiences that you had. What were my challenges? Where were the areas where I dropped the ball? Where did I do well? What did I enjoy? What did I not enjoy? What was the dysfunctional elements that I experienced? What was the suffering? What were the emotions I experienced? Where do I need to improve? So again, if you do this on a daily basis and you reflect and you extract all the experience from your mind on a daily basis every night, you speed up that learning process, you speed up the process of change, because you now increase your level of conscious awareness about all the facets of yourself, because you're now observing yourself. If you don't stop and reflect, and if you don't stop and observe yourself, then you can go days, and if not weeks, if not years, of running the same pattern without having an opportunity to reflect, to then course correct. So by journaling every night, then you're able to capture that experience. You're able to capture the learnings. And when you capture the learnings, you can then do something about them and change. At the same time, we want to do a weekly review. I recommend doing a weekly review, which is every Sunday. You rank yourself. You create all the different dimensions of life that are important. And I've spoken about this before on previous lives, but you want to create all the different dimensions of your life. Everything from personal development, relationships, finances, health, career, business, etc. Maybe compassion, love, friendship, all these areas. And you give yourself a ranking. How are you doing out of 10? Give yourself an honest ranking. And that gives you self-awareness about, where are my gaps? What do I need to improve? So we've got to turn personal development, we've got to turn transformation, we've got to create a structure around it so that we design the framework for transformation. We design our week such that we insert a whole lot of these elements into our day, into our week, into our year, so that we know, well, if I follow this protocol and if I execute it and if I actually stick to it, then at the end of the year, I'm going to experience profound expansion, profound change, and it's all going to be conscious change, which is conscious growth, as opposed to getting to New Year's Eve and thinking, oh, bugger, I've got a whole lot of other unmet expectations, unresolved, unfulfilled desires that I didn't make any progress on, bugger. So instead of having that, you can get to the end of the year going, you know what, I had a structure in place, a daily, weekly, monthly, annual structure, so that, you know what, I am satisfied, I am growing, I am consciously achieving what I want to achieve. So this is the power of having structure around personal development. So the other aspect that I'm going to share with you is really around making time and prioritizing ourselves. It's prioritizing us, because there's no one in the world that's more important than you. You are the most important person in the world. Doesn't mean you're better than anyone else. This isn't self-righteousness or ego. This is, you are the most important person in the world, because you are your own sovereign being, and you have the entitlement to prioritize you as the most important person, because when you prioritize you, you can give so much more. You can make more of a contribution. You have to look after yourself first. It's like the metaphor of taking the oxygen mask first before you give it to someone else. So this is the principle that we have to apply, because by us focusing on us first, we have more to give. We're able to expand, we're able to produce more, we're able to make more of an impact, we're able to be the greatest version of ourselves. And everyone has this philosophy, if everyone looks after themselves to take care of themselves so they can then give more, then the world will be a much better place and our lives will be completely transformed. So that's just a little thing I just want to remind everyone is we've got to ask ourselves, how much are we prioritizing ourselves? How much time and energy and resources and money are we prioritizing for the most important thing in the world, which is us? We need to say, well, I am the most important thing in my life. And my decisions, my actions need to align with that. Otherwise, I'm going to be sabotaging myself. Otherwise, I will not be expanding. Otherwise, if I don't do that, then I won't be the best version of me and I won't be able to contribute. I won't be able to live my dream. I won't be able to live my purpose. I won't have the energy that I need to be able to give and create the life that I want. So another strategy that's really, really powerful, and I've spoken about this before, but I'm going to share it again, and I might sound like a broken record, but this is important, is meditation. And meditation is a really, really powerful tool that creates change, because when you meditate consistently, you develop the skill, you cultivate the skill of self-observation, of self-awareness, of reflecting on ourself. So we can observe our thoughts, observe our emotions, observe our limitations, such that we can create awareness, which was the first element that I spoke about. Once you create awareness, you can then create change. So meditation is a master skill that I believe every single human being on the planet needs to be a master of if we're to truly master ourselves. If we don't have the ability to meditate and the ability to consciously control our thinking and observe self, then we're living unconsciously. We're letting that 95% of our conditioning, our unconscious mind, drive our behavior, which means that we're no longer choosing our reality consciously. It means that our past is informing our reality and our past is controlling all of our decisions. So if we want to hack our reality and be more conscious and empower ourselves, we have to learn skills like meditation. We have to be consistent with things like journaling. We've got to be resilient and we have to be persevere. Really got to persevere with installing all of these things, because doing all these things is not easy. You know, I've been building up all these things over a course of probably 3 or 4 years now. For the best part of 4 years, I've been instilling habit by habit, 1% per day increase in my productivity in terms of my ability to replicate and to reproduce all these habits. And it's not an easy game. It requires repetition. It requires surrounding yourself with a network of like-minded people. You've got to commit. You've got to remind yourself on a daily basis how important this is. And it's easy to fall off the wagon. It's so easy to fall off the wagon. And this is why we need a support community. This is why you need to have people that are going to hold you accountable. We need people that are going to hold us to the highest standard that we possibly can, so that we can integrate all of these habits and we can change consistently. So when we do all of these things, we change. Like, there's no doubt about it. 100%, if we do all of that, I guarantee you will be changing rapidly. The thing about it is most people will probably choose to not change because a lot of people think it's too hard, or they just think, oh, it's too much, or it's too overwhelming, or where do I start? Or how am I going to fit in all my priorities? Well, the thing is, I mean, everyone's got these challenges. Everyone has competing priorities. There's always sacrifices that need to be made. The thing that comes down to is how much do you value yourself? What's truly important to you in your life? And we need to live our life consciously live our life according to our values, towards what's important. What are the real priorities in our life? When we can live based on our values and in alignment with our priorities, that's when we experience flow. That's when we experience living in alignment with our life's purpose, because we now are consciously aware of what's important and our actions are in alignment with our thinking. And our thinking and our alignment are both in the same direction, and it's conscious thinking and it's conscious decision making. So that's what I want to leave you guys with. I know we've covered a lot there. I'm going to put up some of these in the show notes. I'm going to put up a bit of a worksheet, and it's okay to feel like there's a lot here to focus on. There is a lot there. There is so much to work on. But don't do the overwhelm strategy. Don't do there's so much to do, there's so much to change, where do I start? Just pick one. Pick one thing and focus on it, one thing at a time. Once you've implemented that, bring in another thing. Then bring in another thing. So just go with the approach of increase by 1% per day. Just go for 1% per day. You don't have to master everything all at once. Just go for 1% per day, keep improving, keep working on it, keep reflecting, and keep following these principles, and you'll get there. That's the way to do it. So, thanks, Angela. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to leave it there, guys. And as I said, I'll put up some of these notes in a worksheet for the show notes. And yeah, please reach out if you've got any questions. I look forward to seeing you guys again soon. Have a magical week, and I look forward to seeing you again for next Transformation Tuesday. Thanks again, guys. I will see you again soon. Bye for now.